Okay, awesome. Starting the broadcast. Okay, is there a volunteer to say prayer?
I'll say it.
Thanks, Brett.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this day and for all the many wonderful blessings. And we're grateful for the opportunity that we have to learn and grow through our studies at your university. And please bless that we can have a open mind and an open heart, and that we can all learn from each other and strive to do better. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. Okay. So this being my first time, everybody have some mercy on me. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to try to do my best. So there wasn't previous week. There's been some direction, and so I feel like I got gypped a little bit. This week there's like no direction on how to lead it for the leader, but I think we'll still have a good discussion regardless. So this story, this Harvard case study was about Columbia and their final mission. So the disaster in 2003 that happened. I don't know if y'all remember that or not, but I remember I was like 10 years old and I still remember it. And so there's a lot of interesting facts in the case. It talked about how it just broke down what happened in the Columbia disaster that occurred in 2003. It also talked a little bit about the Challenger disaster, and that one happened in 1986. So these two shuttles are part of the space shuttle program that was signed into existence by Nixon. I'm pretty sure it was. So these shuttles, they're like one of many. I think the first one, actually, I'm not sure which one. I think it was the Columbia, then the Challenger, then Atlantis, and then Discovery. And so as we go through the reading, we read all the things that NASA did wrong that led up to the disaster, and the things that they probably should have changed to prevent that from happening. So I guess my first question for you guys is, do you think that the disaster was preventable? The Columbia disaster and the Challenger disaster, were one of them preventable, maybe the other wasn't?
I think that some aspects of it, not necessarily the accident could have been preventable, but some of the things that were entailed with that. For example, I believe it was it the foam or something on the wings where it happened in the Columbia and in previous missions, where they would kind of lower the standard because it was expected to have some sort of problem, and so they were just kind of like, oh well, it's to be expected. So, like, we'll still check it, but it wasn't really something that was high on their priority list, I guess. And so that's what kind of caused that. That's my opinion, though.
Yeah. Yeah, in the beginning, they said that the foam, that was like an action item. And then eventually they said, I forget the specific wording they used, but they just said it was an acceptable risk, I think is what they said. And so, yeah, that's a good point. It's like one of the things I talked about in my case write-up for sure.
I don't think it, kind of like you guys talk about, it couldn't have been prevented, but there's just some things that maybe could have helped it. Like, one thing that really bothered me was like that lady, I think Rocha or whatever her name is, she sent an email to that guy stating, hey, what if we had the people go out and check the plane or check the shuttle, and he didn't respond to it, to the email. That just, something like that, maybe they could have gone out and checked and prevented something from happening down the road.
Yeah. I mean, Rocha, I think she was like right on. She was spot on. She knew that there was like danger, and she didn't really get anywhere with it. So that was like frustrating to read that, like, I don't know, there was a person that was like totally aware and really like alarmed by it, but nothing really happened. And so I think it was saying how they were like engineers, they would like only talk with people from the same tier as them. They weren't able to like speak up to management. And then there's the mission control in Houston. They had like no correspondence with this like this other team, the DAT team. So I thought that was interesting too. Okay, cool. So we kind of already started talking about these, but in your case write-ups, what are some of the problems that you guys said that NASA had? Like, what were the issues? So we've said maybe like lack of communication, since Roca didn't get anywhere with her email. So that's an issue, definitely. What are some other issues that you guys brought up?
Well, I thought that how they were kind of playing Russian roulette with some of the problems. Like, they noticed there was problems, like the foam problems over and over again, but because they got used to the problem, they kind of just accepted that it was always going to be a problem and stopped being worried about it. And
Yeah.
ultimately, you know, were hurt by that. So I was just looking over what they're trying to get us, what's the objective for this lesson this week, right? So I think that even if there's not a lot of info for the leadership, of the discussion, that what we're trying to figure out is crisis management, leadership behavior, and dealing with failure in an organization.
Okay. Yeah, we can use those points
That helps.
to guide the conversation. Because that was like the main points of the week, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just like info.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. What?
You were talking about the unit outcomes in the lesson info.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, yeah, let's build off that. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't see any links until that last one, so.
Oh, you're okay. We just barely started, so. So yeah, let's just go down the list real quick. Let's knock these out. So like Sarah was saying, unit outcomes for the week are enhanced understanding of organizational decision making and learning, as well as catastrophic failures. Understand how failures can evolve. Learn how to prevent failures in an organization. Examine how to manage crises effectively, and learn leadership behavior and how to build an organization that is less susceptible to significant preventable failures. So how do you guys think that this failure evolved? Like, what was the like from start to finish? Does that make sense?
One thing that I think when I was reading it was that it was that complacency of, the little things that you let slide for long term until those little things became bigger things. And that's when it became to the big extreme that it did.
Yeah. Yeah, and so if I go back to the reading. So it first started out with the foam issues. And actually, I think it even went back before that. If we go back to the Challenger and what caused the Challenger to explode, they just didn't have enough safety precautions, right? They had the O-ring, and the O-ring, but they still went along with it. Why do you guys think they still pushed it? Like, flew the shuttle even though there's like obvious like danger?
Well, so I actually remember that one because I was in elementary school, and they showed it on TV. I don't know if Rebecca, maybe Brett remembers that. Like,
yeah,
I don't think we watched it on TV at school live, but like we were so excited because it was a big publicity thing, and they had got a regular person, a teacher, and trained her for space and let her go in the Challenger. So like the whole country was totally psyched and space crazy. I mean, it was more space crazy in the 60s, but like for the 80s, I remember my whole elementary school like was obsessed with NASA. And so there was huge pressure politically and publicly to make this launch happen, because like I don't know if it was a contest that she won, that she got to go in the Challenger, but it was like this huge promo, and they, the whole nation was watching. So I think that they were like, it's an acceptable risk. It's only a few degrees colder than it should be. Everybody's watching. It's going to be an embarrassment. But I mean, it was just devastating how quickly it blew up, and that this poor teacher, this everyday person, lost her life, and just because, what was it, like 1 minute or something like that?
Yeah, it was like 50 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being maybe 6 years old, and just really couldn't. That's like the first tragedy I actually remember in my life.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. And so maybe like time constraints, pressure to get things done. That is another one of their faults. I feel like that.
I think another
Also-
one was too that there was not, because it wasn't somebody at the highest level saying, hey, I think this is not safe. Maybe someone lower down on the totem pole, basically, that they didn't want to listen to that person because they weren't high enough ranking to make that type of decision.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think another thing is there's some protocols that they had, and they didn't follow them when push came to shove. Like they just kind of like glanced over them. I was just so they had some safety precautions in place, but like you guys said, like they just made an acceptable risk and went along with it. Cool. Okay. Sweet. Is there anything else? Okay.
And I was gonna say, just another thought that I was having, how many of us in our everyday life at work, make decisions that, yeah, we probably shouldn't be doing that, but it's not that big of a risk. It's not that big of a thing, but in our jobs, it may not be as, somebody's life on the line, where in this particular case, somebody life was on the line, but we all kind of do the same thing. So, it's easy to point out, hey, they took a risk, but I think we all kind of do that in different levels at times. So
True. Yeah. And it could have gone fine. And I think they were pushing the envelope because there's plenty of times where they did successful launches because they had like 50 missions as the goal for the year, but they just kept on pushing it until eventually the odds weren't in their favor. So what do you guys think they could have done to prevent these failures? We can just go around and maybe each say one. Point.
Well, I think they had an agenda to get like all those shuttles out. They wanted to get out every so often. I think they needed to not have such a rushed agenda. Maybe not push the process so hard, and really think about it and do a lot more testing. Maybe they do tons of testing. It's NASA, but there's always something that you can fix. And when somebody's life's at stake, you just want to be 100% sure before you go out and do it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest factor with that too is like from, the space race from Russia and the United States, that was kind of the mentality from the very beginning. Like space wasn't necessarily probably a big concept until this happened. And so now from every decision that they've made, it's been, okay, well, let's see how fast we can do this. Let's see how fast we can get, progress this technology and things like that. And then that's when you miss things. And so I think, like kind of just going along with what you said, Brett, is just taking the time to do it so that way it becomes more accurate. I think a lot of times we just look at the short term of things, of like instant gratification, where we don't really care about the long-term effect, and then it eventually becomes a downfall. So
Yeah.
I think we could draw a lot of parallels to the end of the Speed of Trust book, when it's talking about like personal responsibility and just saying, I screwed this up without, explanation, but taking responsibility for your job and doing it the best you can. Because like there's so many people involved in the building of these things, and when people don't have that individual responsibility for excellence or the vision, of the whole team, then it's all of the little mistakes that add up and make the big mistake, right? And I'm pretty sure that some of the speed of trust examples we're talking about companies that are totally committed to quality, over reviews or over all else. Because I feel like in this situation, when you have scientists working with government people, that's the disconnect, because you have the propaganda of the government trying to get things done, and then scientists that will fiddle with stuff forever and a day, and trying to have one collective vision that's safe is really difficult.
Yeah.
So I think it might be interesting to look at the parallels between the speed of trust and this situation.
Yeah. Definitely good luck. It's a lot of good stuff. What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, one of the things that I think was a big thing is just not, kind of building on what you guys have said, but giving responsibility to where responsibility is on everybody's job level. And when somebody at one level or another says, hey, I don't feel comfortable that this is safe, listen to that person, because there's a reason that person says that. Just because they might not have the biggest job on the team doesn't mean that they don't have an understanding of what they did, and what they did could make a difference on what is done. And I think there was a lack of that for sure.
Yeah. I thought it was funny how like there's the DAT team, the debris assessment team, I think is what it was. And then there's like the mission control, and the debris assessment team, they try to get pictures of the foam and they requested it from the Department of Defense. But I mean, when the Department of Defense contacted Mission Control didn't know anything about it, just ended up canceling the pictures because they didn't know. And so I was just like, wow, that is a massive like flaw. I feel like just lack of communication, lack of control. But in my opinion, I think one of the things they could have done to prevent it would be they could have had different priorities. I think their priorities were in the wrong place. So and it comes from leadership down. So I think if the leadership did not stress the importance of safety and the importance of, yes, we have a deadline, but we want to make sure everything's right first. They probably didn't stress that enough. Cool, great feedback. Okay. So how do you guys think this compares to our own lives, into our own work environments, into our own families? What are some takeaways from this lesson?
So one thing for me, I worked at Adventures for Youth a couple of summers ago. So what we had to do, we had people that hooked into ropes courses, and so they had to be technically locked in to where if they would fall, that they'd be saved and they wouldn't get hurt. And so this kind of taught me about like my personal responsibility to make sure that every person's life was secure, in a sense, with the knots that were properly tied and those sorts of things. And there were a couple of times where not necessarily I did that, but the kids just chose to unclip themselves. But I still had to take that responsibility, even though I had nothing to do with it. And so sometimes, when these mistakes happen, or, sometimes we just kind of have to man up and take it how it is, and, accept the responsibility, because technically, you have responsibilities. And even if that was something you didn't do, jurisdiction, you're ultimately one responsible. And so I think it's important to set that example for those around you to, make sure that you're following the proper guidelines, because when I had that job, it was life or death for some of those things we were doing. So
Yeah, just take responsibility, and if something goes wrong, and just make sure nothing goes wrong. Yeah, I like that.
When I think about it in my life, like I kind of think about what I need to change, like leadership. If a bunch of people stood up and said something, maybe they did. We don't know the whole story, but like if there was a lot more leadership, and if I in there, that they maybe would not had so many problems, and because everybody would probably pointing their fingers at somebody else, and And so I kind of think I need to, maybe in my own life, I tend to just push. I do that. I push things off on other people, and so maybe be more of a leader and push my agenda to, not my agenda, but what I think is right.
Yeah, like let your voice be heard, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. All right. Sarah and Rebecca, do you guys have anything to add?
To be honest, I used my Tender Mercy card on the write-up this week. You know, she lets you skip one assignment.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to do my write-up for this one this week. But the finishing the Speed of Trust, it was interesting because it was talking about trusting other people when you delegate to them. And I thought that was interesting, thinking about a family setting. And it's really frustrating and hard to teach your kids how to do things. Like we all want our kids to pick up after themselves and to take care of their business, but we don't want to spend the hours it takes to teach them how to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I thought a lot about that and applying that to our family and our teenagers and trying to get them ready to be independent and trusting them. And like my oldest is learning to drive, and I'm afraid to teach him to drive because I don't want to ride in the car with him. But the more I talk about that, it makes him more nervous to drive. You know, like I have to extend that trust so that he feels more confident to drive and to try.
Yeah.
But it's really hard. I'm having stress dreams about it. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. That's typical though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of been thinking the same thing. I took the Tender Mercy as well this week because of family issues, and it's just been one of those weeks that things just failed all the way through with raising kids, and you just, it's one of those days you have to kind of just sit back and say, okay, where did I go wrong? Where do we start from scratch, and kind of just go from there. And you can kind of take that lesson with what happened with NASA, just take a step back and reevaluate what happened. Where do you go from here, and just all that kind of thing. It's the reevaluation, I think, that we constantly need to do in our lives to kind of keep us on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. I think one of the big takeaways from this lesson is just if we do have like a catastrophic failure in our own lives, the best things that we can do is we accept responsibility for it and we learn from it instead of being maybe a little prideful about it and saying, well, it was somebody else's fault, or it could have, it was just chance that happened. I mean, like you guys were saying, little things do add up. And so we need to make sure in our own lives, I feel like, and in our leadership roles in organizations that we're going to be in the future, we need to make sure that that if we mess up, we take responsibility. But if we see something that like we don't necessarily, I guess, agree with, or we see leading in like a bad direction, just kind of like Roka, I think it's our responsibility, like Roka, to try to mitigate that disaster from happening, to help out the company. And I mean, I think Roka, like, she really tried, and I feel like, I mean, that's like the most you can do. You just try and then learn from it afterwards. So I think that's like one of the big takeaways, that like we're gonna have failures in our workplaces and things like that, but how we react to it is really key. Kind of shows off, our character and stuff, and hopefully we won't have anything that's too catastrophic. I mean, nothing that will compare to this scale, but I mean, sometimes it feels like that.
Oh, I just remembered one thing. So I know that I think it was a class last year that I was taking. It had something similar about how you just have to own things and take responsibility without making excuses. And last year, I was the secretary for the maintenance and transportation department of the whole school district. And we were interviewing suppliers, and we had these big meetings, and I had arranged everything. Anyway, I scheduled 2 different suppliers at the same time by accident. So they walked in at the same time to do their sales pitch. And it was super awkward, you know, because they both are trying to win our business and they're being professional and I'm trying to be professional, but I totally screwed it up. Like there was nothing else to say. And so I remembered that we had been talking about it in the it was the human resources class I was taking. And so I just said, I messed this up and I'm really sorry. We would love for you, if it's okay with you, there's a Starbucks down the street. If you wouldn't mind waiting, let us get you a cup of coffee. And if you don't mind waiting an hour, or we could reschedule, but you know, that was my fault. And it was really hard not to say, oh, didn't you get my email? Or someone else screwed it up, you know, and stand there and just be like, yeah, that was me. And I apologize, and still maintain a professional relationship, you know, like, because you don't want to be a ditzy girl that screwed it up. You don't want to be like any of these stereotypes. I wanted to stay professional and have them respect me. But, and I think they did. Like afterwards, they're like, hey, you handled that really well. And it all worked out, but it was scary to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
Just a little work example.
Yeah. That makes me think real quick, we're just wrap it up here, but makes me think of like example in my own life where, you know, something just went wrong. And sometimes you just need to like cut your losses and just, I don't know, walk away from a situation and not try to like, I don't know, push it or just keep on going. So, so this was before I was married, about, you know, it's like over a year ago. And I asked this girl to go dancing. And I didn't know that this was like a dance that you had to pay for, since most of like I don't know. I just had gotten back from the mission. And so it was like only $2 or $3. So it wasn't a lot. And like my bank account was like, I had like $9 in my bank account or something and no cash on me. So we get to the dance, like we're all dressed up. This is like our 4th date or something. And we get to the dance and they're like, oh yeah, we don't take a card. We're going to take cash. If you need cash, go down to the ATM downstairs and get some cash out of the ATM. So I go downstairs and the minimum withdrawal you can make from an ATM is $10. And I had like $9.60 in the account. And so I go up and I'm just like, it's like card denied. I was just like, So I asked her, I'm like, you don't happen to have like any cash on you? She's like, no, I wasn't. I was just thinking that you were going to pay for me. I'm like, yeah, of course. So we go back to my apartment and I'm just like, I think I have some change in the back. And all we needed was $4. And I go, and I should have just called it at that point and like hung out at her place or gone to play pool at the lounge or something, but I just kept on pushing it. So I come out and I have like, I don't know, $2.50 in change. And so I'm like, I don't have enough. And so we go over to her apartment, go and get a bunch of coins, scrounge up like her coins, count it out. And then I'm like, okay, we have enough. I'm sure I counted it out. So we go back to the dance and I promised her a ballroom dance that night. And so we go to the dance or whatever. And they count out the change and I was 10 cents short. So I get added even more to my embarrassment. I was just like, oh my gosh, 10 cents short. And so they let us in anyways. And then when we get in there, it's Latin dancing. Like it's not even ballroom dancing. So it was just like a huge like mess up. And I think sometimes like, I mean, I just told her, I'm like, hey, this is like something we can just laugh about. It's like, I don't know. I'm like, I think it's like just funny and something that we can just like brush off. But I took total responsibility for it. It just made me think of that and how sometimes things can just add on top of each other, and sometimes you just gotta cut your losses. I don't know. Like maybe to tie it back into the lesson, probably NASA should have done that with like some of their. They should have stopped everything maybe and try to fix the phone problem before it got out of control. But yeah, I'm sure Sister McHenry will enjoy that story if she watches this. Anyways, I think that's about it as far as what I wanted to cover today. I think there's a lot of useful lessons that we could learn from this for sure. Yeah. Any final thoughts about this lesson? I think we pretty much covered it. Can't think of anything else. We good?
We're good.
Cool. All right. Who's the group leader for next week?
That'd be me, I believe. I can double check.
Yeah,
I have that.
Yeah, I'm the week after Brett, so
Okay.
Then we'll just continue going in a rotation then.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Cool. Well,
Thanks, guys.
thank you guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. See ya.
Yeah.
Good night.